Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am the puzzling bibliophile. Yes, Robin. I am here with a book review video, and this is a book I read back in July, but I never reviewed it for my blog or for NetGalley, but I got it from NetGalley, so I reread it last night, and I'm making this video review, and then I will post a review for this video on my blog, which is robinlovesreading.com. Now, why did I read this book? And I'm going to put the cover up there. Gaslighting Recovery for Women. What is it about this book by Dr. Amelia Kelly, a PhD, that makes me want to make a book review video? Well, I had a rather interesting experience yesterday. And in talking to my doctor today, I realized that this particular incident is a continuation of something that began months ago that created or was part of a toxic environment that I was involved with that kept recycling over and over and over again. And sometimes when things recycle, they reach a pinnacle. And when they reach a pinnacle, then you just have to figure out where you're going to go from there. So with the situation, I think what raised my hackles, what got my attention, was a comment. And I will be reading some comments. And we will definitely talk about this book and the value of this book. Now, one of the comments that I got that got me, when you deal with toxicity or gaslighting or bullying, one of the things you don't want to do is to stoop to someone else's level. But when someone says, what's the point of coloring? It's just a hobby. It's like stamp collecting or bowling. I don't see what the big deal is. Well, if that's something that's sentimental to you or dear to you, that's offensive. And I took it that way. Now, let's talk about gaslighting recovery for women and why that comment, while I was coloring my rainbow gradient masterpieces puzzle, which that video is up on this channel, why did that comment upset me? And what led me to reread this book? Now, I'm just going to use my Kindle. Whoops, forget that. Kindle has text-to-speech, as you can see. Now, if we go to the beginning of this book, and I think what I'll do is I use my bookmarks. If we go to the beginning of this book, I just want to talk about what gaslighting is for anyone unfamiliar with the term. Now, this term became known years ago in a movie with, I think it was Ingrid Bergman and maybe Charles Boyer or Edward G. Robinson. I'm not sure. I think it was Boyer. And then it became a word of the year, I think, in 2012, and it's been in the American Dictionary since 1988. So it's a fairly well-known term. But basically what it is, it's a form of emotional abuse that people experience. This particular book, Gaslighting Recovery for Women, covers several areas in a woman's life where she could be the victim of gaslighting. So if you're reading this book yourself, and even in the introduction to this book, it tells you to choose the areas in this book and the exercises in this book that will help you the most. Because it talks about part 1, understanding gaslighting, which I'll go into a little bit more. Part 2 is healing. Part 3 is thriving. Now, for example, in part 1, it talks about different areas of your life where you might experience gaslighting. It could be family, it could be intimate relationships, or it could be society. I am only speaking of society. Remember, this is part 1 of the book, and maybe I can show you the first 4 chapters. So chapter 4 is society. So that is the area in which I felt like I needed to be reminded of ways in which I was being affected by the toxicity of a gaslighting situation. Now, one interesting thing I found in this book is if you are aware that you are being gaslit, then you cannot be gaslit. If the person that is gaslighting you is aware that they are gaslighting you, then it does not always have to be effective. However, in my case, I printed out this sheet that I got from my therapist. Yes, I have mental health issues and I see a therapist. And this is an emotion sheet. And so if I'm having a bad day or my bipolar has hit a low, he'll have me pull this sheet and we'll discuss how I feel. So I thought, why not talk about my feelings that I'm experiencing right now in the present tense and how beneficial this book, Gaslighting Recovery for Women, was for me. The first emotion I feel is angry. And then the next one that I checked was ashamed. Well, why am I ashamed? I was telling my doctor this morning that when I developed or ran into a bad situation just yesterday, in the back of my mind, I've been organizing my end of the year videos for this channel. My completed puzzles, my December puzzles, my January puzzle goals, my reading goals for 2023. My reading finishes for 2023 and my reading goals for 2024. I believe that's like 6 videos. So as I know that I'm going to be creating all of these videos, I became ashamed. Remember, we're talking about ashamed. I became ashamed at the situation and felt like, well, if people have such a low opinion of me, then I'm not worthy to make videos for this channel. Then there was confused. Why is the emotion confused one that I can relate to? I'm sorry, I wasn't pointing to it. It's this one here. I was confused because as far as I could tell myself, I did not push a perpetual situation past a breaking point. And I had someone who was determined to knock me down. And therefore, I became confused. What does anyone have to gain by creating or becoming toxic to another individual? How about this one? Disgusted. Utterly disgusted. Disgusted at the person, disgusted at the situation, and disgusted with myself. Then guilty. Guilty because the Bible at 1 Corinthians 15...
From iPad mini.
Boy, these devices are very active today. Guilty because 1 Corinthians 15:33 in the Bible says, do not be misled, bad associations spoil useful habits. So I know that if I'm around toxic people, I could become part of a toxic environment. So the sense of guilt came up. Enraged. Oh, definitely enraged because you want to come out of yourself. In other words, we act in the best way possible in any situation. But if somebody brings us to a breaking point or near a breaking point, then we become angry and enraged and you want to act out. You want to act in kind. Let's see. Is there anything else? Frustrated. Frustrated is down here. Let's see what the facial expression for frustrated is. It's right here. Okay? Frustrated. I felt frustrated because I wish I had walked away from the situation before it became too much. So we're going to stop there with that. I'm going to stop there with that because I want to show you another handout and then we'll get back to the book. 3 chief emotions when I get triggered that my therapist thought this handout would work for me. Angry, anxious, and depressed. I find that I fit the bottom one, depressed, more than anything because it says you're sad, down, despairing, hopeless, gloomy, miserable, sorrowful, unhappy, and dismayed. And then you have thoughts are negative focus, themes of loss, hopelessness, negative view of self. I'm worthless. Nothing's going to change. I've lost. Remember, I was saying how it's time for my year-end videos, and now all of a sudden I feel like, I don't know. Then the urge to withdraw, slowed down and agitated. I keep finding myself in bed instead of sitting over there at my jigsaw puzzle table. Memory and concentration problems, loss of interest in hobbies, restlessness, or behaviors, do less, talk less, or eat less or more, sleep less or more, isolate and withdraw, ruminate on negative thoughts. So with these two particular handouts of many in mind, I reread Gaslight Recovery for Women, which hopefully I will have the cover up on the screen. And I focused on mainly two things in this book. Anything that revolved around societal associations and the worksheets that this book had. And that's what I like about this book is it gave worksheets within the document itself, within the book itself, but it also linked to a website at William Morrow House where you could use PDFs either in a PDF app or you could print and you could actually write in the exercises. So there were the areas in the society that I felt like I was being affected in the worksheets that this book contained. And there were numerous worksheets and they were very, very helpful. Now, all of that to say, like, for example, in chapter 1, what is gaslighting? Well, we all know what gaslighting is, and I want to close this and bring this up. Gaslighting is a situation where someone has power or seeks to display power over a person and to break down that person's trust in oneself. And when a person breaks down a person's trust, it can cause a person to have self-doubt and confusion about their personal opinions, their self-awareness, and their reality. And the book itself says, moreover, self-doubt and confusion about moreover, gaslighting can occur in any relationship, romantic, family, intimate, friends, co-workers, within a group or organization, even medical. I was really amazed to read that women with heart disease are less easily diagnosed than men because of the way gaslighting works in medical society. That's a very deep thing. I don't really feel that my doctors ignore my needs. I feel that they are very attuned to my needs and responsive to my needs. But this book does touch on medical gaslighting. Very interesting to read about. Anyway, back to the book itself. Gaslighting is not always obvious and often occurs in ways that are covert and difficult to detect. Understanding gaslighting effects and dynamics helps you to connect with your true sense of self-worth. Now, if I'm able to understand it, then it should not be effective against me. So that is why I reread this book on my Kindle yesterday, because it says gaslighting is most effective when it goes undetected, so having awareness is key in both prevention and recovery. Well, I know that. I've already read this book. I get handouts from my therapist. I see a therapist. So why was I so affected? Well, in order to understand why I was so affected, I felt like it was time to break out this Kindle book and go to the websites and do those worksheets. And that's what I encourage you to do. The book, I believe, is $13.99. If you get it as a Kindle book and you open it as a PDF, you can use your device to answer the questions right on the screen. If you don't want to answer your questions right on your screen or your tablet, You can easily print out the worksheets and you can work through some of these issues on your own. So, the third time, let's talk about fully understanding what gaslighting is. Also, the techniques and tactics that are used. And also, this particular chapter talks about why women are more subjective to gaslighting than men. Now, as I mentioned, the term gaslighting is a manipulative term let me just read it. The term gaslighting, defined as manipulating someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. That's it. I'll reread it. The term gaslighting, defined as manipulating someone by psychological means into questioning their own sanity. Now, I don't know about you, but I love classic movies. The movie in mind where this term came to effect was called Gaslight. It was a 1944 film, like I said, starring Ingrid Bergman. Her husband eroded her sense of believability in order to make her lose her mind, to try to make her lose her mind. His end goal was to find and steal the family jewels, but in the meantime, he used gaslighting techniques in order to make her feel like she was going crazy. That's where the term came in. Then it started to be used more and more. And then it became part of social media. And then it was popularized. It was even used as a word of the year, Merriam-Webster's word of the year. That's what gaslighting is. Again, Robin is asking Robin, why are you so affected by it since you already know all of this? You've seen Gaslight with Ingrid Bergman a half dozen times. You have read multiple self-help books. You are a Christian who knows that association affects your state of mind. Well, let's read more about this in the book. It says that the gaslighter has a need for power, and that is the most common motive. And then there are two types of gaslighting: non-narcissistic gaslighting and narcissistic gaslighting. Now, narcissists are masters of making you doubt yourself and the abuse. It's motivated by a planned effort to gain control and power over another by increasing self-doubt and dependence on the gaslighter. Now, when this is done successfully, the gaslighter, having altered the victim's sense of reality, becomes a false source of security, thus increasing the trauma bond. And as mentioned, like I said, gaslighting has become such a common term that it had become a word of the year just back in 2022. Now, I'm just going to jump ahead. Now, there are diagnostic tools, there are worksheets, there are exercises, and there are proactive things that people can do to avoid being in a gaslit situation to where their sense of self-worth is dumped down the toilet. Now, there are 7 things here: denial, withholding, trivializing, diverting, countering, stereotyping, and deflecting. Those are 7 common gaslighting technique phrases. Denial was, I never did that. I never said that. I thought that's what you wanted. A withholding technique is, you need to speak up, or you make no sense. You talk too fast. A trivializing aspect of gaslighting. Why are you so needy? Why are you so emotional? You're being overdramatic. Diverting. You can't believe everything you read or hear. I would never believe what so-and-so said. I can't believe you believe that. Countering. You totally don't remember what happened. You have such a bad memory. This is what really happened. Or, I can never trust your memory. Stereotyping. They won't believe you. In fact, they're going to believe that you really are the bad person that you are. Yeah. Because you really don't know what you're talking about, because you just don't get it. Then there's deflecting. Why are you bringing this up when you're the one who's at blame? Or how can you complain about this when you don't care about me? So those are 7 ways that people gaslight. But not just ways, but there are stages of it. Lies and exaggeration, repetition, escalation, wearing down a target, codependency even, giving up hope, dominating and control. I mean, this book, which I got as a review copy from NetGalley, is really, really helpful. Really helpful, because even being aware that you are in a gaslit situation where someone is serving their own agenda to remain in control, you can be swept up. You can be swept up. What are the effects of gaslighting? Trust issues, whether it's mental health or even trauma response. Do you know that a person that receives physical abuse or emotional abuse, it's the emotional abuse has the same effect on the areas of your brain as when you receive physical abuse? Now, mental health issues, why? Because the goal of gaslighting makes the target feel mentally disordered, and sometimes it works. Then there's a trauma response. That trauma response is something worth considering, because with people with bipolar disorder or PTSD, such as I have, you experience triggers, and these triggers are your trauma response. And there sometimes are people that know your weakness and they exploit that weakness for their own selfish gain. Then there's more. There's 7 or more ways that you can use to combat this. And there's ways that how the emotional abuse causes it has the attempts to control, isolate, or emotionally manipulate, threaten, or instill fear in the victim. So what the victim needs to do is they need to find a way to pull themselves out of it and away from it. And I love this. There's this part of the book where it talks about the dear man technique. Dear man, D for describe, E for express, A for assert, R for reinforce, M for mindful, A for appear confident, and N for negotiate. Excellent, excellent ways. And then there's a worksheet right here, which I have nope, that's not it. Where did it go? There's a worksheet here, which I have highlighted. And you can put down your particular situation, what happened, express how you felt about it, assert the emotions you wish you could express during the situation, reinforce your activity to avoid the situation in the future, use mindful ways in which you can handle the situation, appear confident so that your confidence isn't dashed, and negotiate a way to find peace with the situation. I love it. I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. A dear man's statement. And then there's boundary settings. Boundaries. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. A Christian person turns the other cheek. They act in a Christ-like manner, but they have a right to put boundaries when their peace of mind is threatened. If this peace of mind is threatened to where the triggers are too much for a person to handle, then boundaries are very important. So there's a section in the book, Boundary Settings for Women, and worksheet. For example, the worksheet for boundary setting is what you'll need is 15 minutes when you feel relaxed and alert, and pen and paper. Yes, excellent, excellent exercises. Another exercise is emotional individuation versus agreeability. Complicated, but it tells you what it is, how constant agreeability exacerbates gaslighting via codependency, and how to achieve independence and strengthen your identity. Again, another worksheet tells you need 10 minutes and pen and paper. And it just goes on. It's 193 pages, full of exercises, full of proactive things that you can do, like finding things that are favorites in your life. What makes you happy? What brings you joy? What brings me joy is jigsaw puzzles. I love jigsaw puzzles. I love reading. And you'll have noticed by now that this channel has a new name, Puzzling Bibliophile. I enjoy jigsaw puzzles, and a bibliophile is someone who enjoys, loves, and or collects books. So there's a worksheet here on different things that you can do to find ways to engage in activities that bring you joy. Or there's the converse of that. Things that you dislike, things that do not bring you joy. And then it tells you to even think about situations when you were forced to squander back your opinion. You weren't allowed to share your opinion. Unbelievable worksheets. Okay? This is one of my favorite things. I'm going to shrink the screen a little bit so that it looks a little neater, because I had it big. I am not everyone's cup of tea. Okay? I love that one. I am not everyone's cup of tea. I think one of my biggest problems is I want everybody to like me. I've always had that problem from yay high. And I just love this little, it's just one paragraph in this entire book, just that little paragraph, to remind you that you're not going to fit in everybody's tribe. There are going to be people who do not like you, and that's that. Black and white. I love it. Last thing I want to talk about is fast tracking. Fast tracking? Well, what's fast tracking? Fast tracking is examining and keeping track of gaslighting techniques and tactics that are used against you. Again, another exercise, 15 minutes when you feel relaxed and alert, and pen and paper. This means saving receipts, proof that what happened to you, because you need to know it's not all in your mind. So there's exercises. There's a chart here that you can fill in to make it easy for you to understand what happened. And then there's a section there bringing it all together. Excellent, excellent book. Lastly, breaking the unhealthy habits and having self-respect and compassionate self-talk. More worksheets with compassionate self-respect and compassionate self-talk. And then as you get to the end of the book, if you want to read more, you have two things at the end of this book. You have an index so that you can look up very specific things, but besides having the index, you have references. And I want to get to the first page of it. You see these references? There's countless other books, workbooks, recommendations, podcasts, resource after resource after resource that is helpful. Now, I don't know anything about the doctor that wrote this book, Dr. Amelia Kelly, but I tell you, she did a great job. I feel very empowered by it. I'm not going to lie. I have been emotional, teary-eyed, crying, depressed, sad, forlorn, disgusted with myself. Remember the emotion sheet that I talked to you about, which was upside down. Remember this sheet here? Feeling sad, overwhelmed, enraged, angry, ashamed, depressed, frightened, exhausted, lonely, all of those things. So this book by Amanda Kelly is one that I highly recommend. I love it. It's not just a book that you read. Like, for example, I'm reading this book called Brown Sugar, and all I'm doing is literally just reading it. That's not what Gaslighting Recovery for Women is. It's a workbook, and it's a very helpful one. I hope that this video will be helpful to you in one way or another. I personalized it greatly. I was going to read some of the hateful comments that were made to me, but I decided to leave that out because I think that the book itself and the worksheets and the descriptions and the definitions and the way that you can work through it stands on its own. So I want to thank you for watching, and now I've got to edit this video together and get it out. And please let me know in the comments if you think that this book, Gaslighting Recovery for Women, would be helpful to you, or if you've been in a situation, or if you need to talk. But whatever you do, just remember that you are beautiful, you are loved, and you are worth it. You are worthy. And no one can tell you that you are not loved by your God, by your family, and by those who care about you in other aspects of your life. Thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.